I'd like to start with Refilwe, Sebothoma, who is out in the communities, serving the rural communities, and really being the face of the LPG industry and of really getting conversions from biomass to clean cooking. Now, Refilwe, if you can help us understand, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have within the LPG industry and to promote conversions is breaking down some of the misconceptions or kind of the myths, let's say, that there may exist around clean cooking in Africa. Can you help us telling us about some of those and then also what impact you are having by breaking down some of those barriers?
Awesome. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you for this opportunity. So I think, and we saw even from yesterday when we were going through some of the pre-conversations, that if you look at the map, especially South Africa is right at the top, looking at over 80% of electrification. And I think while that is true, the real question for South African context is that electricity available? Is it affordable? And is it accessible to those communities? Because if it's not, then that's why we're still dealing with firewood rape, where women are raped when they go into the field because they have to go look for wood. 24,000 cases of paraffin poisoning are reported in the country because toddlers will drink paraffin assuming that it's something for consumption. And there's also a conversation around, is LPG cleaner? And I think, yes, absolutely, Fernando. If we still have women which are cooking on coal, women which are cooking on wood, and constantly just putting their lives at risk, maybe, yes, LPG is the right fuel for clean cooking for Africa. And I think really, lastly, there has been a conversation around LPG is too expensive, communities are not able to afford it. So when we got into one of the communities here in South Africa in the Northwest, we found out that that community was spending over 1,800 rands, which is just over $103 paying for wood. And we know definitely they can afford LPG. And these are critical pointers because we then need to understand what is the missing point. And perhaps education and awareness is really what we need to talk to. So from Hakem perspective, we have been trading for 16 months. I've been building businesses for the past 15 years, and this is what we have done. So from an employment and skill set, to date, we have employed from just 2 employees to date to 13 employees, which are managing and running our LPG boxes. Our growth in revenue, compared to last year, we've grown over 57%. In revenue. We have transitioned more than 19 women entrepreneurs which are cooking in the taxi rank in the Northwest. We have transitioned over 18 schools from cooking on wood to cooking on LPG. And we have subsequently received 7 awards for the work that we have done. And I'm mentioning this because perhaps we need to start thinking about maybe it's not a small project as we think because there is a massive opportunity to replicate, to amplify, and then to grow that work.
Thank you, Refilwe. And I think the key word is amplify, because if we think of those numbers, 18 schools, that's, if you multiply times the number of students that you're having an impact on, that's great. So I guess, can you tell us about what do we need to do more of this, to expand LPG more and really support the last mile delivery of LPG?
Yeah. So I think from a financing perspective, we then need to really understand that clean cooking is a developing conversation. So it's not business as usual. We're not going to take the normal old financing methodologies because then when we put it against a project like Hakem's energy hubs, there's no way we're going to make it because then we don't have enough security. It's a risk. It's this, it's that. So I think it's not business as usual. We really need funders who are very developmental, who are long-term, who are also able to measure impact because I think impact becomes a massive thing. And I think from my perspective as well, I'm very passionate about starting to demonstrate that we can build businesses who have massive social impact in communities, but we can build them profitably and sustainably. Because a lot of times it looks like we have to do one at the cost of the other. And I think our project is starting to demonstrate, especially when we started breaking even, that we can actually drive social impact businesses, but run them profitably. I think the other issue for me as well is that we need to start looking at clean cooking as a bigger conversation. So if you get into a community and a young girl is saying, ever since I stopped cooking on wood and I started cooking on LPG, my results at school has improved. That's a ripple effect that clean cooking positively has on that life. And perhaps then we need to have Department of Education sitting in this room as part of the conversation. You know, we were discussing earlier, if a woman says, I cannot move from from wood to LPG because my husband still prefers food that is cooked on wood, or they're saying because we are unemployed, we actually use working to the field as a social way of connecting and moving time, then different departments need to start being part of the conversation. Because I then think if we're just going to have clean cooking as a pure energy conversation, we are missing a massive opportunity because we know it does have ripple effect on a lot of things. And we've become a very close friend of Kenya. And I think if we look at some of the things that really Kenya, and I know our colleague is here who will tell us about the amazing work that they've done. What I've loved about Kenya is that they have empowered last mile entrepreneurs or businesses to actually implement the solutions. And I think that's what has worked, right? Where perhaps the conversation we need to start looking at is how does government becomes an enabler for entrepreneurs to implement solutions? Because then that's where the private-public partnerships become very, very important. Lastly, from my end, I do not think we are going to achieve the targets we want to achieve if women are not intentionally being put at the forefront of just energy transition and energy poverty. Because if all these things affect women, why then women are not participating in the value chains of clean cooking? And if women are the ones making daily decisions on clean cooking solutions, why are they not integrated at the forefront of the economics of it, right? And I think, Fernando, we are now finally at the stage where we are getting our project registered on the gold standard, right, for carbon credit. And again, I am demonstrating that small businesses might start small, but it's a massive opportunity for us to start moving the needle and impacting the bigger perspective of what we're trying to do as Africa.
Thank you, Refilwe. And so now what I'd like to do is go a little bit more upstream to a distributor marketer of LPG. And so we have Natasha Camriel. I think you've seen a lot of common themes as some of the things we've heard already through these first few hours of the conference. And you being here shows Total's commitment to Africa. And I think in a different part of the value chain than Refilwe, but you also have the same focus, right, on profitability with safety, not one or the other. And training also is a great part of your business. So can you tell us about how you are supporting clean cooking transitions here in Africa?
Yeah, so indeed, first, the fact to see that in my role now, which is a newly created role, you have LPG and clean cooking, is clearly showing that clean cooking is this ambition is completely embedded in our business strategy for Africa. And so the ambition we have at the moment is clearly by 2030 to impact 100 million people, so to give access to clean cooking to 100 million people in Africa and in India. And we are coming from a world where at the end of 2023, we were giving access to 45 million. So it means that we really need to accelerate and grow. And we are doing that by entering new markets in Africa, like Namibia, Tanzania, Mozambique, or Rwanda, for instance, and by accelerating growth in the countries where we are present for long, like Kenya, for instance, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Uganda, Senegal. In all those countries, it's not about doubling the business, it's about multiplying by 4 or 5 So it's really a large ambition. And to do that, we are ready to invest $400 million between now and 2030 to make it happen. So it's a large commitment from TotalEnergies.
That's amazing. And I guess because you mentioned these specific countries, some of your legacy businesses, and then some of the new ones that you're going into, what have you seen as kind of the winning formula or the best practices in some of these markets that you operate in, which are very different one from the other, right? You have coastal versus inland, you have some that are producers versus importers. Can you tell us what has worked the best that you have seen from your kind of zoomed out perspective?
So there is not a single solution, I would say, because each market has its own challenges to begin with. But one of the hurdles is clearly the affordability, as you were saying, and I fully agree with that. And it's not about the affordability of using the LPG on a running basis. It's really the initial cost you have to make to switch from wood or charcoal to LPG. Because this is about paying your deposit, paying your stove, your connecting kit, the first kg of gas. And so for this, we are testing solutions, like in Kenya with MGAS, a smart meter that we are putting on the cylinders, which is allowing you to pay as you cook, in a way, so diminishing the initial cost of the transition. We are testing that as well in Rwanda with another partner, B-Box, exactly the same kind of solution. That's one part of the issue. The second point is the cultural issue, so to help the women to switch. And to do that, I will give one example, very practical, in Ivory Coast, which is called internally the caravans. It's basically a truck with some stands which can be easily moved to rural areas, closer to the customer, the closest possible, to show in real life how this is working. How can you cook safely with LPG, the benefits of it, what is changing, what is common, how you use it. And by just showing, giving example, letting women testing it in real life, this is helping convincing. And the same for the communication campaign. Since 2024, we have launched more than 30 communication campaigns across the continent, each campaign being very tailored and focused and customized to really address the communities it is aimed for. And with this kind of communication campaign, we have touched more than 40 million people, digital campaigns as well, always targeting women, and indeed communicating the benefits of cooking on LPG, to really explain the benefits of it, how to use it safely, and this is really helping the adoption of the solution.
That's really encouraging. And I guess we've heard from the last mile, we've heard from a business that's distributing the fuel across the continent. Now, let's talk about what usually doesn't get talked about, which is the supply side and kind of the upstream side, the national oil company side of the question. And so for that, we have Dr. Temilola. George, I know that collaboration, like what's happening here, is very important for you. Can you tell us about what are APPO's views on clean cooking?
Oh, thank you so much, Fernando, and thank you to the organizers of the Africa Energy Week. From in her APPO perspective about clean cooking comes in different ways, but I'll just mention a few. Today, we see that over 1 billion people in Africa still cook with firewood and charcoal. And this goes beyond the energy issue. It's also a health crisis that we're looking at, as indoor pollution is known to have killed over 100,000 people in Africa. And also it's a gender issue where we have women and children spending a lot of time fetching firewood. And also we look at it from the angle of dignity. We strongly believe that clean cooking can restore your dignity. You don't have to spend so much time in gathering firewood, because we know it can be so inconvenient. It deprives you of rest, deprives you of channeling your energy into something more productive. And also, we see it as assets that will restore your dignity in such a way that you will not be stigmatized by the poverty type of choices of energy you have access to in cooking. Then we also see it as an opportunity, because LPG, clean cooking itself opens up the economy. And when it gives family time, ample time to have time together, and it will create job along that value chain for local suppliers and local manufacturers of cooking appliances and probably canisters. And we also see it as freedom. When I say freedom, freedom for girls, they can go to school. Freedom for women, they can engage in doing more positive things. And we see it as freedom for community. They don't have to depend on deforestation and health burden of indoor pollution. And above all, in APPO, we see it as a signal to freedom from energy poverty, because accelerating clean cooking places Africa on the same pedestrian with the rest of the world in terms of access to modern energy. Thank you.
That's excellent. And I think to hear somebody who is supporting the producers, really understanding all of the benefits of LPG and talking about how it opens up the economy, I think it's also interesting to see that, you know, for an upstream company, LPG is so far down the value chain that they tend to kind of maybe not think about it as much. But in the same way that it can open up the economy, obviously, and we're going to have a panel on monetizing LPG on Thursday, so I highly recommend that you all attend that. But from your perspective, what strategies are you implementing with your member countries, right, to expand access to clean cooking or adoption of clean cooking with LPG?
One of the APPO strategic objective is environmental protection. And in the center of this is, in achieving this, is clean cooking. And through our policy and advocacy, especially through one of our platforms, the platform of the APPO NOC CEOs Forum, they tasked the APPO Secretariat to convene a roundtable on cutting down gas flaring and fugitive maintain emissions. This we did in partnership with the Ghana Petroleum Commission. And the outcome of this roundtable is the Accra Declaration. And the Accra Declaration has a kind of integral part of it, which is accelerating clean cooking. And this declaration has been circulated among our member countries, advising them to add it to their national strategies. And the implementation is left for them. And this has also reinforces APPO commitment to environmental sustainability and accelerating clean cooking. Also, we are known to create platform for cooperation and collaboration. Last week in Ghana, we had the 7th edition of the NOC CEOs Forum, where we bring the CEOs together to come and present their opportunities and challenges. And during this meeting, when they present their opportunities and challenges, we see that this type of dialogues are very good. It creates opportunity for cross-border projects, especially the ones that will help to strengthen LPG distribution cross-border in Africa. And we also believe that we can overcome our challenges collectively, not as individual. Another thing we're looking at is the promoting local content development. Right now, we are trying to convene the 4th edition of conference and exhibition on local content in African oil and gas industry in partnership with the Ministry of Hydrocarbon, Republic of Congo, SMPC, the National Oil Company of Congo, and the NCDMB of Nigeria. This type of platform will actually encourage local manufacturers and producers, to come up with maybe fabricating this cooking appliances, even go further to manufacturing canisters and so on. When these are available, it accelerates clean cooking because the appliances become more accessible and more affordable. And also, we're trying to develop a kind of roadmap on financing and accessibility model. When the Africa Energy Bank becomes operational, probably a fund will be set up to assist our member countries, especially those who are involved in LPG project access. You know, they can access funds that will help them to set up and to establish. All these are strategies that we are putting in place to help accelerate clean cooking within our member countries.
That's great, and I think two words that I get from this, one is the collaboration, right, across the various countries, and then financing is key. But then we have another element that kind of cuts across everything that we're talking about here, which is the regulatory environment. And we keep hearing Kenya, 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 and I think if it wasn't for these successes that we're seeing throughout the continent in creating the right environment for private players to find it profitable within the guardrails that regulators can set, we wouldn't be having the conversation today of the growth that we're actually seeing. Because I always like to say, we have to move past talking about LPG as potential. We have to talk about it in terms of the growth that we're seeing and how do we replicate that. So with that, for you, Edward, everything comes from the top. And we saw that from APPO in terms of the CEOs and the national oil companies pushing down certain strategies and setting targets and objectives. But it also comes from the top in terms of the regulators setting up the right structure for these types of businesses to succeed. Your market has grown tremendously. It's really been a success story. But it still faces similar challenges as what we see in other Sub-Saharan African countries. Can you tell us about what has been your recipe for success? Because I think a lot of countries look to you and how you've kind of changed things as it needed to be changed to create that right environment. Can you tell us about what you've done?
Thank you, Fernando. And last but not least, I think in terms of regulatory environment in Kenya, I think we made a deliberate effort back in the year 2009 because we realized that accessibility was one of the biggest problems with LPG. And we asked ourselves, why is LPG not accessible? At that point, every marketer used to have a unique valve. So that if you buy a Total cylinder, I'll use Total because she's seated next to me, that cylinder had a unique valve, so you had a unique regulator for the cylinder. And when you ran out of gas and you didn't get a Total cylinder, it meant that you either went back to firewood or used another alternative means like kerosene. And we found that to be an entry barrier for LPG because at that time we had not streamlined the supply as such. So at that point, government made a deliberate effort to unify the domestic cylinder valve. And we call it the standard capacity cylinder. So the cylinders that we have, which are standardized in Kenya, is 0.5 kilo. And I think I'll say 0.5 kilo deliberately because it's one of the smallest cylinders that you'll see in the market. In fact, when I was told about it, I told the guy, just bring it over, I see it. So if you come to my office, on top of one of the cabinets, I have a blue cylinder, which is a company called Half Gas, which is 0.5 kilo. But we realized that the standard that we have, which basically we use in Kenya, had covered that 1 liter or 0.5 kilo of gas. And we told them, why not bring it into the market? Because we realized that the issue of affordability of filling of a cylinder will go with the size of the cylinder, and that's how we allowed it. So we also have a 1 kilo cylinder, a 3 kilo, a 6 and 13. So all those cylinders, when you come to the market, you have to fit them with a unified valve. And the reason why we asked for the unification of the valve was to allow exchangeability of cylinders. So we had something called the LPG cylinder exchange pool, although it ran into problems maybe 10 years after it was put in place. But I think it worked wonders in our opinion because at the point of bringing in the LPG exchange pool, our per capita consumption was about 2.3 kilos. But then with that exchangeability, people were able to access gas regardless of the brand of cylinder you had. If you have a 6 kilo and you get a competitor 6 kilo, you're able to exchange it, and then the competitor has a way of getting those cylinders to the owner's depot. So we moved the per capita consumption from 2.3 kilo to about 6 kilos by the time the pool was coming to an end. And I think that shows that a lot of people adopted LPG because the supply issues had already been dealt with. But then we also asked ourselves, what is a competing substitute to LPG? And here we're looking at things like kerosene. And we found that you can be able to buy kerosene in quantities that you so desire, or quantities that are commensurate with your economic power. So if you have like $1 and you can be able to buy kerosene for $1, you are more empowered than somebody who has that $1 and they cannot afford to fill a cylinder probably, which costs $2. So most likely that person will go for what they can afford. So we asked ourselves, how can we get LPG to be more accessible to the market in terms of the economic power of the people? And that is what brought us now to the issue of the half kilo I had talked about, and also the issues of smart meters, so that now people are able to buy cylinders, to buy the gas that they so desire at the point of cooking. So we have a token system, and we have a very successful case in Kenya of a company called MGas. It's quite a capital-intensive kind of business venture, but it's paying off. Today, MGas has about 500,000 customers, and most of these customers were previously using kerosene or wood. We're asking ourselves, with the statistics of about 21,000 Kenyans dying annually from indoor pollution, and having a solution which would help people who are using those dirty fuels transition to cleaner fuels, what is better? And here I've had my fellow panelists talk about the issue of women and children. And of course, here we're also looking at the girl child. How much time do they waste searching for firewood, for example? Which time would be used basically for other productive things like business or even education. So I think we've looked at it in that landscape and asked ourselves, in terms of enabling the distribution chain, what can we do to make the landscape better? And I think last year we also had another move that we made as government. We've changed the building code, and now we are allowing what is called gas reticulation within buildings. So if you have an apartment block, you can just meter the gas and pipe it to the apartments. Then you have a smart meter, and then the people pay for the consumption of gas as they use. These are some of the ways that we have found it makes easier for the populace to adopt the use of gas rather than staying on dirty fuels. We've had our fair share of challenges. I think with the LPG exchange pool, people were able to access market competitors' cylinders, and that brought the issue of illegal refilling, because the cylinder doesn't have a unique valve, so the filling head you have can fill any brand of cylinder. And I think that's something that we are trying to deal with. We are trying to look at how we can now basically deal with the aspects of illegal refilling, higher penalties for the offenders. We are looking at technologies. We are looking at track and trace. I think we're just about to roll an aspect of track and trace of cylinders, either by use of RFID chips, or we have better solutions which are in the market. And then, of course, we have increased the threshold number of cylinders that you can get into the market with as a trader from the minimum of 5,000, which initially was. Now we expect you to have about 30,000 cylinders in the market. And just before I finish, I think my sister here has talked about women, how women are involved in the business of LPG. And it has reminded me a case where we did develop the legal framework, because in our country, once you develop subsidiary legislation, they have to be taken to Parliament for vetting. And there's a committee in Parliament called Committee on Delegated Legislation. So I did take the LPG regulations to Parliament, and I think I found the chair of that committee was a woman. And she asked me, it's women who use LPG for cooking. Can you show me that during your public participation, there was a women's group that was involved? I started sweating, Fernando, but luckily I found one group. And that's what saved that piece of legislation. Otherwise, it was at the verge of being thrown out. Thank you.
Wow. Well, I think you were being very clear with your successes, but to some extent, you were also being quite modest. If we think of the average per capita consumption of LPG in the continent, it's right around 10 kilos per person per year. In Sub-Saharan Africa, it's closer to 5. And you're what, at 7.5? And yet, through your president, through your government, there have been some very ambitious goals set on top of what you've already done. So you're not done yet. You can't breathe yet. Can you tell us about what are you going to do? What are you going to do next? You have this target of getting, I think, to 15 kilos per capita per year, so almost doubling where you are now by 2028. What are you going to do next to ensure that prices continue to fall and that this becomes available and affordable for more people?
Thank you, Fernando. Yes, for sure we are not done because 7.5 kilos per capita is nothing compared to what we're seeing in North Africa, about 40 kilos per capita. And I think our key markets, we've also learned from others. I think Senegal was one of the key learning points, especially for the 6 kilo. Initially, we never had the 6 kilo in the market. We had a 13 kilo, but looking at Senegal being over 10 kilos per capita, it taught us a lesson of going smaller in terms of the cylinder. That's how we came to the 6 kilo. So in terms of the next steps, last year, October, our government did approve an LPG growth strategy. And that growth strategy basically is aimed at transitioning the entire populace from the use of dirty fuels to clean cooking. And here we're looking with a clean focus on LPG by the year 2028. So it has 4 thematic areas. The first one being the legal and regulatory framework, which we have already done. We've revised our regulations just to make it more easy for people to get into the LPG market, make it stiffer for offenders who are found doing illegalities in the market, and that talks to the aspect of safety, so that when an investor brings cylinders in the market, like Total here, they feel that the cylinder asset is being utilized to commensurate to the economic power they are putting in the market. So, so we have revised the regulations, and they have gone through Parliament. They have been approved. We've also upped the number of cylinders from 5,000, as I say, to 30,000. We've allowed things like autogas. We've allowed things like gas reticulation within our residential dwellings, and much more. I think it's a huge document. You can be able to get those regulations in our website. Secondly, I think we've looked at the aspect of infrastructure, and we've seen that government itself doesn't have a huge import terminal that they're in control of. And I think our pipeline, Kenya Pipeline Company, has been given the task of building a 30,000 metric ton storage import infrastructure in Mombasa. The reason why we would want government to have its own import terminal that they can control is because we are also looking at bringing forth what we call the open tender system, a tender system for the importation of gas. That way we'll be able to know the quantities, the accurate amount of volume of gas or quantity of gas that is being consumed in Kenya, and we can control the movement of this gas from the import terminal to the refilling plants, so this traceability, so that we can also reduce the aspect of illegal refilling. I think the next one is on the issue of clean cooking in schools. The last statistic we did some like 6 months ago, we found that 98% of our schools are using firewood or biomass for cooking. And here we are talking about 11,000 schools, boarding schools in Kenya. So the government has made a deliberate policy that these 11,000 schools have to be transitioned to the use of gas by the year 2027, that is next year. So you can imagine we have a very huge task in terms of controlling the infrastructure, because all that infrastructure, when it's being put up, we have to give permits, we have to inspect, we have to give licenses, and of course that means there's also the manufacture of those tanks. There are also the distributors of gas in those schools, and government did it by doing. They actually demonstrated it by doing. They have already installed gas in 20 schools as a pilot project, and I think it's working perfectly. And I think lastly, Fernando, is the aspect of now the consumer of cylinders, who is neither school nor a government institution, and this is a consumer that we find in the grassroots. So the government has also made a deliberate policy that they are going to issue 8.5 million cylinders, subsidized cylinders, by the year 2026. And I think 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, we had an advert which was put in our newspapers for investors like Total to participate in that program. In that program of subsidized cylinders, government will be contributing 40% of the cost of the cylinder. The marketer will pay 40% of the cost, and then the consumer pays 20% of the cost. That will make the acquisition cost, which my sister was talking here, much easier, and we intend to connect more people to the use of gas. So those are the things that we are looking for, and of course we will have accelerated consumer education. We also run programs for computer education. We do have a budget for that. And also we are looking at accelerated enforcement activities so that we can be able to reduce the activities of illegal malpractice in the market. Thank you.
That's great, and I think it's very encouraging to see not just you thinking about the regulation, but also thinking across the value chain, because that's typically what's missing. We have a lot of conversations with players in the market who are so focused on, what is the right subsidy when there's so many other elements of the value chain that have to be addressed. So congratulations on being on the right track, and I wish you all the best in staying on this track. I guess we have a few minutes left here. What I'd like to do is maybe ask each of you very briefly to share with us, what do you take away from what you've heard that you want to take back to your colleagues when you go back? So you'll go back to Paris, you'll go back to Nairobi. Tell us, what do you want to tell people that you've learned here that you need to be talking about more as a team? I'll start with you, Refilwe.
So I think collaboration has been such a major thing, and integrated strategies, community engagement as well, because I think we're learning throughout the conversations that it's no longer good enough to try and bring solutions to people, but we need to make sure that we create solutions with the people. And I think for me, Fernando, I don't think knowledge is power, but I think the application of knowledge has become the power. And that's something that we're talking about all the time, that let's implement. And I think to Kenya's success story, it's people who are just audacious to try and start where they are with what they had, and they just started implementing. So I think implementation becomes a major issue for Africa energy context.
And it ties with what NJ was saying about, you have all of these funds, let's invest them, let's use them, right? Natasha, what about you?
Yeah, I will add as well that collaboration and partnering are going to be key. I don't think this kind of ambition we have for clean cooking in Africa collectively can be done by only one company or one government or one country. It's really about collaborating together to build the reliable and safe supply chains, to develop the right communication campaign. And so I invite everyone to join me, to contact me, to see how we can work together to make it happen. That's really what I would like to take away with me today.
Thank you.
The call for action.
Thank you. And what about you, Dr. George?
Thank you, Fernando. I'm so excited really to listen to the success story of Kenya. I hope someday Kenya will join the African Petroleum Producers Organization.
He's working hard at it. He's working hard at getting oil off the ground.
We'll be so excited to have them on board so that other member countries can learn from their experiences and also see how they can implement most of these strategies and working policies. Also learn from their pitfalls, from their mistakes, so they don't make the same type of mistakes. What I take home is their experiences, the success rates, and I hope that someday they can join one of our forums or one of our platforms to share their stories so that others can learn, because we've come to understand that no single country have the solution to this problem. But when we come together, when we collaborate, then we can win together. Thank you.
So basically, what you're taking back is you want more work so that then you can share that across. You're just giving yourself more work. I love that.
Yeah, that's good.
What about you, Edward?
Yeah, thank you, Fernando. I think there's still room for everyone to learn new things. I think even if our case has been successful, I think there's always room for improvement because we are not in a perfect market. And I like what my colleagues have said. Each market is unique. it has its own problems, and the problems can actually, the solutions will always be found within that market space. And for example, when it comes to the smart meters, we are using mobile money. Our people are using mobile money to pay for the smart meter. Maybe that's not what you'll find in another market, but I think the principle is out here. So it's looking at how that principle can be domesticated by each one of us. I think what I've learned from the panel here is that there's still room for consumer education in a more practical way. I've liked what my sister has talked about. They go into the market space with caravans of cylinders and tell consumers, this is how you use gas. I think that is something that we've not been doing that way, and I think it is a learning point. Sometimes seeing is believing, so that when we tell people about gas that has been filled illegally and the dangers around that gas, so we can be able to demonstrate to the population and tell them these are the dangers of using illegally filled cylinders. And we can also now use the same message for those ones who are now converting as new customers. We can have a smart meter. We demonstrate how you buy the tokens and how you cook. And then we demonstrate that using gas is cleaner compared, and even cheaper compared to the use of other forms of biomass like charcoal. I think that practical aspect is what I'm taking away, so that we can be able to accelerate the connection and get more people in the fold of using gas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to my four panelists. If we could please get a round of applause before I hand it over to our MC. Thank you very much.